Welcome to another edition of Northern Heat. My name is Bob Lennon, President of Thermalwood Canada and host for the show, and our special guest today, David Hunter. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me along, Bob. I'm delighted to be here.
So, David, you're with the New Brunswick International Student Program, and let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that this is, again, like a lot of topics that we bring up on this show, it's things that people don't even know exist. So let's talk a little bit about that, about the background, what it's all about.
Oh, fantastic. So the New Brunswick International Student Program has been going for just over 20 years. And it's really funny that you bring that up, because we go into communities and we talk about the New Brunswick International Student Program and people say, I've never heard of that before. But when they go to see the school shows, or when they go to see the basketball games, or anything like that, they will see the blue hoodies. They will not make that association between the international students and the ones that are actually there in the schools. So it's great to come on things like this and be able to talk a little bit about it. So as I said, the International Student Program has been running for just over 20 years.
Really?
Yep. We have students from all over the world. I see you've got a map of the world on your wall here, and I could put a pin in almost every country that we have students here. So a lot of them come from Europe, and they come here because they're part of the Anglophone school districts. So we have students all over New Brunswick. At the moment, just over 800 students in New Brunswick, here in the north.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but here in the north, we go from Rexton all the way up to Campbellton. So we have got students in Rexton, Miramichi, Sunny Corner, Bathurst, Dalhousie, Campbellton, and we have local coordinators that work with each of those areas and the students that are there. So we have about 150 students just here in the north, which is great.
These students are high school students, I gather?
We also have middle school students in Miramichi. So we have a middle school coordinator in Miramichi. So they come from certain schools. So we've just sent about 8 or 9 Colombian students back to Colombia last week, and they were here for 8 weeks. So sometimes they come for the whole year. Sometimes they come for just one term, and sometimes, like the middle school, they come for 8 weeks. But we do have 2 in middle school that have been for the whole year, and they will come back and come back and come back, and maybe even, graduate here as well. So we have a number of students graduating this year from Bathurst.
This is pretty amazing, because when you think about a middle school, you're pretty young, and to have to leave your homes, even the fact that you're in high school and leaving your home to go to another country to study and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we did just before the beginning of the interview, was the fact that, through COVID, you said it had dropped down, but then all of a sudden everything started to go. And New Brunswick seems to be in a position now that you were mentioning that you're turning back some students. So what's going on? What drives people to come here? What's so special?
Well, I think when we're looking at it, our numbers were incredibly high after COVID. We had a lot of people who wanted to come, but unfortunately we had to turn them away during COVID, because of the restrictions of some countries were so tight that they couldn't come over. But we were one of the few, if not the only, especially here in the Atlantic province, to still continue an international program. So even during COVID, we had a few students here. It had to be a lot different, of course, than it is at the moment.
Yeah.
But I think what people find and people really enjoy, and parents who are in Europe and Brazil, Argentina, look at New Brunswick and know that it's a beautiful, beautiful place. They know that their students are going to be really safe here as well. And I think that's something that's really also welcoming Atlantic Canada, New Brunswick in particular. And I know you're going to talk about this, because maybe your viewers are thinking, why is this strange Scottish guy? Why is this strange Scottish guy talking about international students? Is he an international student? I'm a very old international student. But so I'm new to New Brunswick as well. And one thing I can certainly say without any hesitation is the welcome I have had here is absolutely fantastic. And that welcome is known through the world. And sometimes we undersell ourselves here in New Brunswick, I think,
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And we need people like yourselves to come from outside to come and tell us that, because we can't see it sometimes. We just, we take things for granted, and we don't really see the stuff. So it's great to be able to hear that. So in the program itself, like one of the things that we kind of talked a little bit about too before the interview was the fact that these children go and live with families.
Yeah.
And the advantages for these families of taking kids in are discovery and a whole bunch of other stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, but we're one of the few programs that actually has a homestay element. So when the students come here, they are placed with a home. We're actually doing that process right now, and we're always, delighted to see new hosts coming in, and we'll talk about that later on, I'm sure. But when we match them, that match starts right now. So students and families are talking all the way through the summer. They'll communicate with each other. They'll get to know each other. So by the time the students arrive in September, they're actually already aware of where the family live, who the people in the family are, but they'll also start to know a little bit more about New Brunswick, because New Brunswick, you have so many things that we can do here. We have students that maybe love to ski. So we'll look at them and we think Campbellton and Dalhousie, perfect area for them to be in, because it's such a fantastic, 2 minutes and you're on the slopes as you go here. We have students that maybe really love to do theatre and things like that. And there's in Bathurst especially, and Miramichi, there's amazing theatre. Jeff here, the high school, Jeff McQuarrie, and his team have just finished doing Mamma Mia. And we had 7 of our international students in the cast, including one doing one of the lead parts. And that was amazing to see these things. So these connections with the host families are made really early. So again, I think that's one of the things that parents from these students, who are, if they're in Germany or if they're in France, and they can see these connections, that it's a friendly, a warm place that they can go. And again, the opportunity that these students have, many times we have this idea that they're coming from privileged backgrounds, but actually what's happening is parents are really trying to get their children to open their eyes a little bit more, see a little bit more of the world there that's there. And New Brunswick is, again, really popular because it's such a fantastic place. It's an outdoor place. They know they're not going to be sitting in front of the TV all the time. They're going to be out doing things. And again, that's a great selling point.
Well, one of the things, and I've traveled to Europe too, and met a lot of people that did study internationally because it's being promoted and stuff, and their parents really want them to go out and learn more about the world. But the other thing that you were telling me a while ago is that it's also good for the host families, because they're thinking of different things to do, and it's like, having visitors coming to the house, right?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do this weekend? And they're discovering things.
Yeah.
They're discovering more about our province.
We have the most amazing host families. We really do, all over. Here in Bathurst, they're fantastic because we're quite central. So if we're in the north, and they can go up to Campbellton, they can do the trails, the biking that they can go along, and some of these beautiful trails that we have are just absolutely amazing. But they are actually discovering New Brunswick. I feel a little bit like that myself. We had students going to the archery on Saturday with the Bathurst Archery Club, and I had no idea. No idea what I was going to expect. I thought we would have like a field with some targets, but no, it was in the woods. And they had the most amazing targets and the most amazing things that went through. And the students absolutely loved it, and that was a host father who's got 2 boys at the moment. And he had introduced archery to them. The 2 boys loved it so much, they kept talking about it. So we thought, let's get all the students along. But we would never have made that connection if it wasn't for the hosts that were there.
No.
And the hosts, usually, they're so proud of New Brunswick as well. That's one of the things. We offer a stipend. It's about $800 a month. People never make money, from this. That stipend's there to help them cover their costs, to make sure, because everybody knows the costs of food, everything is rising so much. So we want to make sure that families aren't actually, having to use their own money. So we make sure there's a nice stipend there for them. But so many of our families just, see it as an opportunity to go and explore this amazing province. Go up on Mount Carleton. I've not been myself yet. That's one of my to-do things to do, and climb up there and see some of them amazing things. And another wee thing the students talked about on Saturday was the wildlife. They're seeing a moose for the first time, and we see them all at the side of the road and think, oh my word, okay, what's going on there? But it's absolutely fantastic, and they just love that because they're coming from Berlin, they're coming from Paris, they're coming from.
They wouldn't necessarily see anything like that.
Not at all. Not at all. So it's amazing.
Well, I have a friend of mine that comes from the United States, from Florida, and every time he's been here, he calls me a liar because he said, we never get to see a moose. And he said, you talk about them all the time. But the segue and the point that I wanted to kind of take off on is that you talked about dollars, okay? And this also means quite a bit of economical downfall for the region too, right? There's money being spent and stuff like that. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I know. I'm always worried, because you Canadians, a little bit sometimes don't talk about money very much, but it is an important thing that we need to talk about, because these students do bring such a financial benefit to the schools that they're in, to the host families as well through the stipend.
Yeah.
And there was a study just a couple of years ago that on average, it's about $25,000 that each student brings. So here in Bathurst, we're close to $750,000 that students will bring in. And that's a real direct benefit to the Bathurst area, and every area similar to that as well. So the schools are allowed to spend the money that these students bring in, because it's different from the normal students from New Brunswick. So they bring a higher sort of tariff and value to it, and the schools are able to use that money to buy lots of different things that benefit not just the international students, but all the students in the school as well. It gives them a bit more freedom. And I know that here in Bathurst, the principal, Sean, is delighted to welcome as many students as we can. Sometimes the difficulty we have is we have to, turn people away because we don't have enough host families for them as well. So that's one of the things that coming on something like this is fantastic, Bob. So thanks so much for having me. But being able to share that, but the economic value to each area is fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic.
So if somebody wants, I love the segues and how one thing fits into another. So if somebody wants to become a host family, how would they do it? How do they get involved?
We've got some exciting news, because this week we have our brand new coordinator. We had a wonderful coordinator, Kim Ferguson, and it's a big shout out to her. She was absolutely wonderful and amazing, and she decided to retire earlier this year. And our new coordinator, Jenny Chapman, who I'm sure lots of people will know the Chapmans from
Down Shore,
as we talked about earlier on. So she starts on Thursday, and she is our local representative. So she is the one who is the contact, and we'll put up some information at the end of this as well. But within our team, we also have our regional manager. So our regional manager is Debbie Walls. She was the vice principal at Parkwood Heights and also worked at the district level. And everywhere I go, everybody knows Debbie. Everybody knows Debbie. And I'm kind of like the new guy with a strange accent. And hopefully I stick in people's heads as well. So my role is the Homestay Administrator. So basically I assist the coordinators and I assist Debbie, and I just try and make sure everything's going in the right direction and things are running smoothly, especially for our homestay families. If there's any problems with payments or any problems with students, and, sometimes there is, sometimes something comes up, they're teenagers. As we go through, we've got a very clear set of rules that we go through, and we do orientation at the start of the year and make sure the students know what the rules are and make sure the homestay families know what the rules are. But they're teenagers, things happen, so, and that's why we're here as a team, to make sure that we can help that. We very, very rarely send anybody home. We're always usually able to intervene and work through, just as any teenager has as your own. I'm sure your own son gave you a few moments as well when he was growing up. So
absolutely.
As we go through.
So this is great. We talked about bringing in kids from other countries that, might eventually turn around and say, listen, we want to move to New Brunswick, and we've got to increase our population base somehow. But this gives them visible aspects, get to know the people, get to know the culture. So that's great. It's a good economical downfall for the region too, and it gets back into the schools, so it helps everybody out. The host families get to learn more about kids in other countries, and they get to explore a little bit more about our own province. It sounds like a win-win situation for everybody.
Yeah, and can I just pick up on a little point, because you talked about retaining the students here. So on a couple of weeks ago, I was at UNB with a whole group of students, about 25 students who all went down to UNB. So they looked at St. Thomas, they looked at the colleges that are there as well. And on Friday, I'm taking more students along to Mount Allison. So we have this program that's running at the moment moment through the New Brunswick International Student Program, where we are really encouraging, and the universities are actually giving special deals to the students and encouraging them to stay within New Brunswick. Because, as you said, one of the things that we look enviously over at Nova Scotia sometimes is like how they're able to retain young people and how they're able to do that. And from a very small part, of course, it's a very small part. I think we had about 30 students stay last year in New Brunswick, and they will then go on to university here. And then the hope is that, they will love New Brunswick. But we have so many stories of host families, and this summer they'll see their student away at the end of June, and it'll be tears and as they go. And then 2 weeks later, they get a knock on the door, and it's one of their former students who is back visiting with their own family. And those are the tremendous stories. Those are just amazing. And we have a family who is going out to, from Miramichi, they're going out to Germany for a wedding. One of their former students, and then again, because they think of them as their host, not their host mum and dad, they think of them as mum and dad when they're here, and they look after it, and they make these fabulous connections. And that's why people host year after year, because they know that these connections are really strong, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see. So
a great opportunity for families to build that relationship and to have that experience. Well, that's great to hear. Anyways, my hat's off to you and your committee, and keep up the good work. Hopefully this interview that we're doing gives an opportunity for other people to consider the fact of being a host family and making more room for more kids to come in the area.
Would love to see. Yeah. And another wee part of that I hope you don't mind me mentioning is for the last 2 years, we're actually now looking at, because it's not an exchange program, it's we have obviously students coming here and then they go through the school system, but we are now taking students from New Brunswick. So we have one from Bathurst at the moment studying in Germany for a year. So we are fully funding that scholarship, and we're now going being able to do that. And we have that usually about October time that we start to look at potential students that go through, and then the ones that are then interviewed and then picked, and then we fully fund them to go to. So next year we have them going to Germany and Argentina as they're going through. So we're now looking at sending students from New Brunswick over, and that's part of the benefits of the financial part of the program, that we're able to then think we can now sponsor students and put
do it back and forth and give them the experience too.
Completely.
Well, that's amazing. Well, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And thank you very much for participating and coming from outside and showing us that that we do have a great area to live in.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
There we are. Here we are. Another edition of Northern Heat for this week, the place you come to listen to the stories that haven't been discovered yet.